The next submission that is awarded a prize in this ceremony comes from the United Kingdom, which is why my next short speech will be held in English. Our next award goes to a series of authors: John Tomani, Lucy Natarajan, Sarah Chaitor, Florence Sutcliffe-Braithwaite, Dimitrios Panayotopoulos-Tsiros, Lobhan Morris, Maeve Taylor, Maeve Blackman, and Catherine Welch from University College London. And the submission is entitled Social Infrastructure and Left Behind Places. By contrasting the neoclassical vision of comparative advantage, in which interregional trade and economic integration is in principle beneficial to anyone, critical economists across space and time, from Rosa Luxemburg over Raoul Prebisch to Gunnar Myrdal and of course Kurt-Rothschild, have articulated a different view. This different view emphasizes, among other things, that increased international economic openness might easily lead, and has often led, to asymmetric path dependencies. In such constellations, some places may profit overproportionally from economic integration, while others are being left behind. Following the eloquent summary of Nicolas Kaldor, we might say that success breeds success, while failure may easily beget even more failure. We can find a great deal of evidence for such asymmetric path dependence if we take a peek into economic history, especially what economic historians call the Great Divergence, that is the highly path-dependent development of living standards since the onset of industrialization, which forcefully indicates that many countries are on a losing long-term trajectory as they never found ways to truly benefit from their integration in a global economic order. By documenting that this core intuition of economic polarization also applies on a regional level, the research submitted by the recipients not only underscores this core conceptual intuition held by Kurt Rothschild, but also fundamentally extends and revalidates the idea that economic development is typically spatially uneven and often coined by persistent dynamics of divergence. Moreover, by focusing on the role of social infrastructures in this process, the recipients spotlight a key determinant of social welfare in general, but also local well-being and belonging in particular, that can be seen as a moderating force in times of economic stagnation or distress. However, as the submitted works find indications for a positive association between regional development and the expansion of social infrastructures, this points towards a routine that rewards or further supports those that are already more successful. Such a pattern of positive feedback might easily create additional amplifying effects, further reinforcing existing path dependence with the potential to eventually lead to social alienation and political disintegration. By explicating both the concern for a realistic conception of welfare as well as the explicit consideration of the socio-economic conditions under which regional polarization proceeds, the submitted works closely resemble Rothschild's intention to understand economics as a social science that takes the immanent interaction between economic variables on the one hand and political as well as social variables on the other hand as its main vantage point. By awarding this year's Rothschild Prize to this body of work, we would like to honor not only the great effort undertaken by the recipients to contribute to a better understanding of the causes and consequences of regional polarization, but also their really great success in attracting public and political visibility for this hugely important issue of spatial polarization that matters for the UK, that matters for all of Europe, and that matters beyond. Congratulations to this important contribution.
Congratulations, John Tomani. This is the next. awarded nominee now. He is inheritant of the Kurt-Rothschild-Preis. Rothschild macht's leichter für mich. Und Rothschild, ich übe noch. I'm happy to share some moments with you on stage as well. So first of all, thanks for bringing up the topics you and your co-authors brought up to this work that has now been awarded with this important prize. There are several, I would say, claims that you use, and I think one of those which is well known in every country is those of the left behinds. And the question is, what is the left behind? Is it a concept of a region? Is it the concept of a social group? And what is the important issue to consider if we first think about the left behind as regions, some places where the investments haven't been done in the last years or infrastructures were broken down. So what are the most important things to consider if we talk about those left behind places?
I think we can talk about two things. One, we can talk about a set of economic processes which leave behind some places. Industries disappear, wealth concentrates in other places, often big cities. And that means these places become locations for multiple forms of deprivation. But more than that, these are places which, in our work shows this very clearly, I think, these are places which feel as if they've been abandoned. They've been abandoned by the political elites in that govern their societies. And that's a very dangerous predicament because these are places where faith in democratic processes are diminishing and where the appeal of authoritarian populist politics is very strong. So we're talking partly about economic processes, but we're also talking about the way people feel and respond to those processes. And I think that's very, very important.
Totally agree, and I think many of you can relate to that experience, and we can at least see these effects also in election results. But let's say this would be a conference of mayors tonight. What would be the 2 or 3 things you would recommend to especially focus on those areas where there might be the impression from the inhabitants that the so-called elites have forgotten them and their needs, and this social fabric is not existing anymore? What would be the most important things to start?
Well, we emphasize the importance of social infrastructure, which are the structures which bring people together and which overcome the processes of disintegration and polarization which we see in society. And so my first message to the mayor is, take this seriously. This is not an added extra. This is not something we sort out later down the line when we've addressed productivity and innovation and growth. This is a really important basic task. So take care of it. The second point we make is that social infrastructure takes a long time to build, but it needs careful maintenance. If we don't take care of it and we don't maintain it, it can disappear very quickly. And particularly in left behind places, when that infrastructure goes, it adds to that sense of abandonment. If you have workers' halls in the centre of a town which are standing empty, it's almost a symbol of what's being lost. So I'd emphasize, take care of what you've got. And the final thing I'd say is that where social infrastructure is strong and is durable, it's usually because the communities themselves have played a major role in the building and maintenance of that infrastructure. And so I'd say to the mayor, mayors don't always know best. Listen to the communities and build on the activities that the communities themselves are leading. Don't impose grand plans from outside. Listen to the people who are doing this work in the communities and work with them to address these issues.
I think one example, and we're in the center of this town, is Vienna, all over the history of this town and all over the comparison with other major cities all over the world. But if if we are focusing on that, what the so-called Red Vienna, Rotes Wien, really did outstandingly, it was the mentioned fact that they and we still are investing into social housing, into community building, and we're also taking care of everything, if it is the public transport or if it is just the substance of the city itself. Why do you think, or what could be the impulse going off from Vienna to other cities?
Well, I'm a great admirer of Red Vienna. It's an inspiration for me, both historically and presently. In historical terms, I think we learn from the Red Vienna story that attending to these very basics, or what you might call the everyday economy, providing the services that meet the needs of ordinary people, is key. We can focus on abstractions like innovation, like productivity and so on. But for most people, what's important is whether their communities are functioning well. And that's the lesson I take historically from Red Vienna, from the person after whom this prize is named, and the other great thinkers of that era like Karl Polanyi and so on, who I associate with that story. So, we've moved, there are obviously limits to that model, and we live in different times. But for me, we can learn lessons from history, and Red Vienna is a good place to look for those.
And ongoing. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for sharing your thoughts with us, and congratulations.